For English subtitles, please press the subtitles button. And welcome to a new episode of Reptil TV. My intro animal for you is a tiger python in the color form hypocaramel. I will show it to you for 3 reasons, which I will explain. The number 1 reason, quite simply, is that hypocaramel looks really cool. I absolutely love the color. So, yes, I find the perfect mix between hypo and caramel. The hypo itself is actually pretty, and the caramel is also pretty, but hypo caramel, this, how should I put it, maybe this buttercream colored appearance, I really think is great and fantastic. The second reason why I chose this one is that you might remember the intro animal, a large carpet python that I had some time ago. It was incredibly exhausting with its 4 meters. This one is about 2.5 meters long and is a lot more relaxed. I thought I would make it easy for myself. That's the second reason. The third and actually main reason, for those who have been paying attention, may have already noticed it. The animal has some quite noticeable scars, so noticeable in quotation marks, so some very severe scars up here and especially down here. We received him because he had quite severe burn injuries. At first, it didn't look that bad. It was just a burned crust that he had on him. But then the crusts shrink, and underneath you can see the burned tissue. For a while, it really looked quite bad. We had the animal here. We even had it in the sales room because we simply didn't have anything in the quarantine that would have matched its size well. You have to keep the animals on newspaper to prevent it from getting worse or becoming infected, especially. We treated it on one hand with with the ointment, and then afterwards also with hydraulic. And as I said, in the sales room, there were people or acquaintances who took me aside and said, "Stefan, look at how he looks. You can't just show him here in public. What will people think if they see this?" and so on. And then we also wrote it down that we received the animal and that it is in treatment. What I want to convey is that there are indeed animals that need to be treated. On one hand, you can hide it or you can choose to show it. If you make an effort in that moment, and I would say if you do everything right, then I don't even know if it really needs to be hidden so urgently or if it should be. And when you see in the end what a wonderful, beautiful animal comes out, sure, it still has a few scars, but personally, it doesn't bother me at all. A beautiful animal, and that's why I have a detailed introduction for you today. Today's episode is called The 5 Most Venomous Reptiles in the World. The emphasis is on venomous. We are not talking about the most dangerous or where the most incidents occur or anything like that, but we are really talking about the 5 most venomous. That means which reptiles have venom, or which have the strongest venom, meaning that they can kill a certain number of living beings with a specific amount of venom or something like that. This is the criterion today. So it's not about where the most happens, but rather which has the most potent venom. So I have now selected 5, and I did a bit of research myself. This is not something I came up with completely off the top of my head. Especially with venomous snakes, it's not really my area of expertise. I researched this topic. What one must also see is that there are, again, differences even there. For example, there is a significant difference whether I administer the poison intravenously, intramuscularly, or subcutaneously. If I get a snake bite, it will most likely be intramuscular. Or if I happen to hit a blood vessel, or the bite hits a blood vessel, it will be intravenous. But you can already distinguish between them. Experiments were conducted, and it was observed that, look, the venom works much stronger intravenously than intramuscularly. And with another snake, it worked stronger intramuscularly than intravenously. So this is also completely tricky. What I mean is, the 5 that I will now list potentially belong to the animals or snakes, to get straight to the point, that have an extremely potent venom. But there will certainly be shifts, and in the future there will be studies where one realizes, yes, oops, the venom is indeed stronger than this, and so on. So this does not claim to be completely correct, because that is not possible with this topic. We called it the top 5, which is always a sensational title. If we are going to name it so sensationally, then we naturally start more or less from the back. 1,000, the number, or in 5th place from my research and my classification, is the Boomslang. Boomslang Dispholidus, Dispholidus typus is its name. I even have to look it up. I don't even have the scientific name in my head, but most terrarium keepers probably know it. The Boomslang, you have even seen it in its original form, occurs south of the Sahara. So from West to East Africa down to South Africa, it is actually quite common. It's a false viper. Funny, right? Interestingly, a false viper means that it has its venomous fangs quite far back. As a result, there are not often any bite incidents, because to really get bitten seriously, I think it has to be a stupid situation. It has to be a finger that really goes in that deep. Well, I could imagine that up to the BN or at any thick spot, the venom probably wouldn't be able to inject significantly. She indeed gained recognition through the fact that the herpetologist or scientist Carl Schmidt, a German name but an American, was killed in 1957 by the venom of a boomslang. 2001. He received the snake at his institute, more or less what was known about it. The animal comes from southern Africa, but actually not much more was known about it. And it was said, what kind of snake is this? He examined it, unfortunately got bitten, and then relatively soon realized, oops, that was indeed a venomous bite. He didn't take it too seriously, or rather, he approached it quite relaxed, documenting everything as it developed, how he was doing, that the venom site was bleeding, and that his mucous membranes, nose and mouth had bled. Then he also documented what he ate and did everything like that. Went to sleep. 2001. The next day, I woke up again, continued documenting, and by the time it had been about a day and a half, I really felt bad. I also reached out to others, and it wasn't getting any better. I also vomited my food undigested. Now it's getting a bit ridiculous, but he probably didn't take it seriously until that moment, and a few hours later he was dead. So, a sad story, a bit behind it, but of course also a spectacular story. And I believe that is why the boomslang has gained relatively high recognition and definitely ranks in the top 5. It truly has a very potent venom, which is unusual for a colubrid. In 4th place in my research is the banded chalk Bungarus, multicinctus, or rather, there are several Bungarus species. Most of the time, the multicinctus appears as the Bungarus with the strongest venom, but it could also be that there are other species from the family that might have a somewhat more potent venom. Let's take the multicinctus, an Asian venomous species that primarily lives on the ground, found from southern China all the way to Myanmar. Myanmar, Taiwan, and Laos are included. Not all that rare. The good thing about them is that these circles are not particularly aggressive. Interestingly, it used to be said that they wouldn't bite during the day, only at night. I wouldn't necessarily rely on that. I think if you annoy or disturb them long enough during the day, they will bite then as well. But it is a very bite-averse snake, so relatively little happens with the animal. When it bites, it really has a very potent venom. So, due to the extreme effectiveness of its venom, it rightly ranks fourth. In third place is a species of snake that I would have guessed would be in first place, but according to my research, it only ranks third as a general term. These are the sea snakes. There are even some that have a relatively weak venom, but most of them have a highly potent venom. It makes sense as the sea snakes hunt their prey in the water. I think that if they catch and bite any fish, the fish obviously can't swim for another half a kilometer or a day until it finally dies. It has to die quickly so that they can actually catch the fish. I think that is the background of why they possess such a potent venom. The most poisonous of them is probably Usand, one of the venomous ones. There are again countless studies on this. However, Ipisaurus duboisi occurs in the area or marine region between northern Australia and New Guinea and is often observed in these waters. As mentioned, they are said to have some of the most potent venom among all sea snakes. It's also interesting like that. So everything a little bit in the corner of Australia, you will notice that it seems to have particularly received a lot in terms of toxicity. And this Episaurus dubois, named after Dubois, belongs there. Accidents involving sea snakes are very, very rare. You might also know of movies featuring divers who even handle sea snakes and so on. I myself have seen sea snakes in Sri Lanka and they don't do anything. So I ultimately didn't touch them and I don't have to, but they give a completely calm impression. And they generally do not tend to bite, at least most species. There are probably also species that do not know this and may be a bit more aggressive and might bite. So if you see a sea snake anywhere in the world, don't touch it, just as a rule of thumb. Stefan said they don't bite. Can you touch them, please? No, but there are, you might have seen it on television, fishermen in Asia who lay out nets, and often sea snakes end up in these nets. And the fishermen just pull them out of the net and throw them back into the water without gloves, without anything. Although they possess a deadly venom, they are actually very reluctant to bite. Accidents with sea snakes are very, very rare. So one can say that nothing happens at all. They do happen, but they are very unusual, very rare. But as mentioned, the venom is a very potent snake venom. I just mentioned it, but somehow it always gets more poisonous as you head towards Australia. And in second place, we are now in Australia, the brown snake, Pseudonaja from Australia, takes second place, having an extremely potent venom. By the way, the eastern brown snake is responsible for 50% of the fatal accidents in Australia, to make the whole thing a bit smaller as it is. Fortunately, fatal accidents in Australia have decreased to single digits in recent years and decades. So in a year, 2, 3, or 4 people die from snake bites. 50% of those are attributed to the eastern brown snake. That means maybe 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3 fatalities. It is naturally related to excellent medical care, to antivenom, and to the fact that snake bites overall, at least in many regions of the world, happen much less frequently than one would typically think. Nevertheless, the topic is the effectiveness of the venom, and there is the eastern brown snake. In second place, it has a highly effective venom, and yes, that's why it rightfully holds the second place. In first place, for the most potent, strongest snake venom in the world, is the inland taipan, the Australian inland taipan. Oxyuranus is the genus name. Theoretically, the bite of an Oxyuranus, meaning the average amount of venom it delivers with a bite could theoretically kill 100 adult humans. So, an incredible amount of a bite, 100 adult people, 2001 can imagine if a person gets bitten. then it really becomes absolutely critical, and with anti-venom and so on. What is also interesting, or what we haven't addressed the whole time, is that a very important factor is, of course, where a person is bitten or where someone gets bitten. If I can possibly get it directly into an artery, then it will certainly only take a few minutes to just a few hours. On the other hand, we previously heard about the Boomslang. The whole thing lasted 1.5 days, and the Boomslang is ranked number F in terms of potent venom. I believe the notion that one used to have, that you get bitten and 2 minutes later you're dead, is nonsense in almost all cases. There may be exceptional cases, as mentioned, where if a major artery is hit and the venom really lands directly in the heart, it can happen more quickly under certain circumstances. But it is a lengthy process. When a person is bitten and quickly needs to receive treatment, there is time for an antidote, or there is still time for an antidote. I don't want to downplay it or say it's all easy, but the idea that you could be dead 10 seconds later is not quite the case. It is also important to note that the inland taipan is relatively shy. When I, as a human, walk around, it tries to escape like most snakes do. Accidents usually happen when the snakes are somewhere in the corner, or when a person accidentally steps on them. They will naturally bite in self-defense, but the animals are very shy. The inland taipan is found in areas that are already sparsely populated. Australia itself is quite sparsely populated, and where they occur is not in the typical agricultural areas or anything like that. Rather, the animal is shy. So, encountering an inland taipan or searching for one in Australia for photography would likely require days, weeks, or even months of searching, which naturally results in very few accidents. That was indeed the episode about the top 5 most venomous reptiles. If you say, "Oh Stefan, now you've said something silly, this and that definitely belongs in, and this and that definitely needs to be taken out," feel free to comment below if you enjoyed it. If you found it interesting, give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Regarding comments, which will surely be commented on by you, yes, where is the black mamba? It is said to be extremely venomous. It is actually not among the top 5 with the most potent venom, in fact. We will do another episode about the most dangerous reptiles in the world, where most people or where most fatalities occur. We can be curious about that. Maybe it will be included. But when it comes to the potency of the venom, the black mamba is definitely not in the running. That was today's episode. Remember to give a thumbs up, and otherwise stay loyal to me and check out USend. What should I say? Check out the various top 5 lists that we will be doing so little of now.